Hi, everyone. This is Brendan Murphy. Today, I'm talking about SAMR, but really just technology integration in general. So, as I said, I'm Brendan Murphy. I'm an educational specialist. I specialize in technology integration and professional development of teachers. And the SAMR model of technology integration is the SAMR stands for substitution, augmentation, modification, and redefinition. Um, it is a very popular model these days, but we're actually not going to start with that. So I'd like to start with what are our real basic choices in technology integration? Real 50,000 foot view of this. And really, there's two ways. There's on the one side, there's personalized education. On the other side, there's individualized education. Um, in, if you think about it, the great example of personalized education is really Khan Academy. That's the kind of the poster child of it. You take a pre-test and the computer determines what skills you know, and it says you know these skills, and the next skill you need to learn is this one, and you present it and you practice it and you master it and you move on to the next skill. And it's even more adaptive than that. It doesn't bombard you with one skill until it thinks you've passed, 8 of the 10. It can move up and down a little bit and come back to skills for you. But that's the basic idea. And the whole system is pushing you towards their definition of mastery of this content. Um, on the other hand, it's individualized education is um, less about getting to the same place and more about finding the individual students and helping them learn and grow on their own. The theory is that if everyone follows their passions and interests and are encouraged in those, uh, with good problems, good fuzzy problems, they'll be required to learn about a variety of subjects and master the content in those subjects to master their passions deep enough. And even if they don't have strong passions, a good fuzzy problem, most people really like to solve good problems or at least work on them in either individually or in groups. But it's a lot that is a lot more difficult to uh, explain to people, obviously, and it's also a lot more difficult to show progress in sometimes. So that's kind of thought of as a soft skill, whereas personalized learning is you know thought of as the accountability type, but they're not necessarily um, completely different, and they're not even necessarily strictly incompatible. The real difference is that they are uh, they have different roots philosophically in education and what you think education means and should do. So the SAMR model itself was developed by Dr. Punentierga, and it's just basically that you know as you become more comfortable with technology in an education setting, you start using it in different ways. At first, you will just see it as a way of substituting for what you already do. And then you'll start making what you do a little bit better. And then you'll start modifying what you do to take advantage of technology. And then finally, when you're very comfortable with the technology, you will start completely changing the way you teach or how you teach, because in a way that was not possible without technology. So that's the substitution, augmentation, modification, and redefinition. Now, it's very easy to mistake the goal of SAMR to be one of redefining all lessons to the top two levels of modification and redefinition. And we've done this before, like the old adage, nothing is really new in education. The idea that all students should be in higher ordered thinking skills or in the top levels of Bloom's taxonomy. But in reality, education is not about getting everybody at the highest levels all the time. There are times when, those lower levels of remembering or memorizing or practicing skills are very important. And they should not be discounted just because they're, quote, lower level scores, lower level skills. So our model should not be a rigid framework. It should really be more fuzzy and adapted to the situation. And that requires professionals to actually implement, to decide when you should modify or redefine a problem and when you should just substitute or skip the technology altogether. That should be something we leave up to the professional in the classroom, the people who are closest and know the students the best. But sometimes working and learning is best done in the shallow end of the pool, especially when you're new. But even when you're experienced, you're in the shallow end. Sometimes you're substituting and modifying as opposed to substituting, augmentating as opposed to modifying or redefining it. And there are other times when it's really good to get in that deep end and really get those critical thinking skills going on and having students take over the work. But, there are occasionally times when you never even get in the pool. You never even use technology for a lesson or whatever. But it should be, instead of the ladder where we're climbing to the top, we think of the pool and the fact that if you go to a pool, you're not necessarily, the main goal of going to a pool is not always to go into the deep end or dive off the diving board. The main goal of the pool for some people is, getting a little sun and relaxation or swimming laps or doing flips off the board or just learning how to swim. So technology is the same way. The integration of technology is the same way. Sometimes we're learning more about the technology. Sometimes we're ignoring the technology completely. And sometimes the technology is affording us possibilities we would never have had without it. So if you really want to think about technology integration, you need to realize that it's not about the technology. Okay? You can't just throw shiny objects at students and say, woo, you're all going to be smart now and pass the test. There's literally so much out there. Here I have almost 8,000 bookmarks. 1,300 of them are education bookmarks. 400 of them are technology. Almost 400 are Web 2.0 technology bookmarks. So I don't know all of them right off the back of my head, but I have them there in my toolbox and I can go back and look for them. And I do that a lot. When people ask me about stuff, I'll go searching through some of these old bookmarks and see what I can have. And as you can see, I have tags on them. So it's not just a random search, but I'm looking for them in a specific way. And that's not only a use of technology that was not there before, but it's the way we all need to use technology. Nobody knows it all. It grows and changes so fast that for one person to keep up with it is impossible. What we really need to do is work together and use these sort of crutches to help us get along. But the technology in itself isn't the start of the lesson. The start of the lesson is content and pedagogy. And when you start as content experts discussing or thinking about how do I want to, or how is the best way of getting this content to my students, and in not just in an efficient manner, but in a manner that allows them to really understand it and retain it for long periods of time, then technology comes after that. If I say I want students to do simulations, there are options in technology. If I want them to do experiments, maybe they're just doing an experiment by hand. Maybe they're doing a simulation of an experiment. Maybe they're combining stuff and they're doing an experiment and recording something on technology. All of this stuff doesn't come first. You don't say, well, I want to use a Chromebook and this experiment. You instead say, I want them to do this experiment, and the best way to do it is for them to be hands-on over here and record information over there and share the information with their team and then disseminate the data that they collected. And some of that may require technology and some of it may not. But it starts with content and pedagogy. So, for those in my school, we've spent a year with our Chromebooks in the classroom. And now it's time to start thinking about what has worked, what hasn't worked. What advice will you have for next year's teachers who are going to get students for the first time with Chromebooks? What advice are you going to give to each other? What changes will you make for next year? Because you're the experts in technology integration now, and not me. So thank you very much for listening, and have yourself a wonderful day. Oops. Get this to stop. There it is.